In DTF printing, as in all printing, understanding colors at a fundamental level is really important if you want to take your printing to a professional level. And a great place to start is the color gamut. I'm going to explain what that is and why that's important in just a second. Let's dive in. Hey, before we dive into color gamut stuff, I just want to be clear. You can create great DTF prints without having to have this color gamut fundamental color knowledge. What we're about to discuss is foundational knowledge for folks who really want to get into professional level printing where they have clients with really strict color requirements that have to be absolutely perfect. This is the stuff that you need to know at a basic level to be able to dive into that. Thanks. Color gamut is, in practical sense, the number of colors you have available to play with in a particular workspace. A workspace being RGB, like what you're looking at on a screen right now, or CMYK, which is what DTF printers and a lot of printers speak and print in, or Pantone, which you may be familiar with if you've been in the printing industry for a while, maybe mixing inks for DTFs. It's important to understand these color gamuts and the number of colors available when you're trying to go from digital design to a physical print. And to kind of help you understand the differences, I thought it might be interesting to look at some practical numbers. How many colors are actually in these color workspaces, but also how many colors are actually perceivable or distinguishable by the human eye, and that'll give you some idea of the real delta or difference between these color spaces when you're trying to, say, reproduce colors for a client. Now, a great place to start is thinking about how many colors is the human eyeball capable of perceiving. Well, the numbers vary, but theoretically, but a sort of accepted estimate falls somewhere between 7 and 10 million perceivable colors. That's what your eye can physically see. If you look at the RGB color space, so again, light, it's what light emitting screens use to mix colors. You might hear people say it's an additive color. Okay, that's getting a little too nerdy, but how many colors can an RGB color space produce, or your computer screen produce? The number is around 16.8 million different colors. However, how many of those colors can you distinguish with your eye? Now, under absolute ideal lighting conditions, it's about 1 million colors. Now, I don't think everybody, depending on how good your eyes are, can actually distinguish that. But there's another standard called sub 2 delta E, which is typically accepted. And when you're at that level, so a little bit less restrictive, the number's actually around 250,000 different colors. So you're looking at a computer monitor, it can generate up to 16.8 million colors. You can actually see maybe 250,000 of those colors. Well, you can see them all, but you can actually distinguish between this red and this red and this red and this red. That number is of distinguishable colors. 250,000 colors. Now, you have the CMYK color space. A typical CMYK color printer, so the DTF printers that you're probably familiar with, can print anywhere from 10,000 to 20,000 distinguishable colors. If you have printers like some of the printers in our fleet that have expanders, then that number jumps up to about 50,000 distinguishable colors. So you get quite a big jump there with the expanders, but it's still significantly less than the, 250,000 distinguishable colors in the RGB color space. That RGB gamut is just so much bigger than the CMYK or CMYK with expanders color gamut. Now, another commonly used color space is Pantone. Now, there's actually a fixed number. I think currently it's around 2,160, or let's just call it 2,100 colors in the little color book that you would get from Pantone. Out of those, they're mostly distinguishable. If your eyes aren't so great, that number might be, say, 1,900. Okay, now in DTF printing, Why is this important to understand? It's because you're designing your artwork for the most part in a digital environment. You're designing it in an RGB environment. When that artwork goes from a screen to a physical print, you're printing it in a CMYK environment. And yes, there are fancy tools like NeoStamp and Edit and ripping software that try to distinguish this RGB and what's the closest match in CMYK, and they're very, very, very good. But there's just a wide range of color difference there in the gamut. And then many times you might need to hit a Pantone number for a client. Maybe you're lucky enough to have a job for a professional baseball team, Red Bull or the Denver Broncos, and they're like, we need this orange, we need this blue, we need this yellow. They want to match that up to their Pantone book. Well, there's quite a few more colors in both the CMYK, the RGB color gamut than you have with Pantone. And sometimes you have to go back and forth to look at a physical print to kind of like try and match those up and get the color that you're actually looking for. And then sometimes those colors don't necessarily all overlap. So if you were to this circle of this circle and this circle, and somewhere in the middle they actually overlap, and some of them they don't really reproduce the same way. So this is why it's important to understand color gamut as a foundation when you're starting to get into that more professional level of printing and thinking to yourself, okay, I really need to do a great job color matching. And people start talking about color spaces and hitting a certain color. And I did this and I made my design in Canva, which is only really working in an RGB color space, but I've got a CMYK color from a client, or maybe they gave me a Pantone book. If you don't understand color gamut and how it works, you're going to have a real hard time decoding when you're having trouble matching colors. So color gamut, how many colors are in your box of crayons you have to play with, which ones overlap with the other ones in different color workspaces. That from a DTF perspective, we're oftentimes playing around with those RGBs, those CMYKs, and those Pantone colors. Okay, I hope this was useful for you. We've got lots more color videos on our YouTube channel and coming up. And as always, like and subscribe somewhere over here, and we'll see you in the next video.